Hi my crafty friends, welcome to the Upcycle Design Lab. If you're new here, my name's Cindy and I craft using recycled and repurposed materials to give you ideas on ways to make and create more economically and ecologically. And today I have another fun plant charm creature that you can make from aluminum cans. But before we get started, I wanted to mention a few things about navigating through this video, because if you're not familiar with making beads from aluminum cans, you're going to want to pay attention to all the additional links and start with those video tutorials. If you already know how to make these beads, you can jump forward and backwards in the video using the chapter links. And you can find the chapters and the links to all the additional resource tutorials in the description box below this video by clicking the More button. The supplies you're going to need to make this little caterpillar are 2 5mm round black beads, a pair of round-tipped jewelry pliers, a regular pair of needle nose pliers, some E6000 glue. You want some jewelry wire. I like to work with a 20 gauge wire. It just finishes nicer, but it is a little heavier and more difficult to work with. So if you have trouble working with the heavier wire, you can also use 22 gauge. It will also work for this project. You also need 10 beads, and I've got mine drying here because I just put some alcohol ink on them to color them, and I have another finishing sealer coat for the alcohol ink. But if you don't want to make the aluminum can beads, you can also use beads that you purchase or beads that you salvaged from old jewelry. You just need beads that are about 5/8 of an inch long and have a 7/16 to a 1/2 inch diameter. If you do decide you want to make your own beads from aluminum cans, for this project you'll need 6 aluminum cans, and you'll want to go ahead and tear them down so that you have these flattened sheets. If you're interested in how I tear down my aluminum cans into these 4 usable parts, there will be a link in the video description for that tutorial. And there's also a tutorial on 3 different ways that you can flatten aluminum cans into these metal sheets. To make the beads, you're going to need this Green Creativity bead roller, which you can purchase on Amazon for around $12. And you can roll the beads either with the can print side out, or for this project you can roll it with the aluminum side out and then add your alcohol inks. And there's also a link in the description for a full tutorial on the bead making process. And the last thing before we get started, this is what the template looks like for the bead. It comes in 3 different sections, and you're going to tape them together to make one long strip to roll into the beads. And each of these templates will make 7 beads. So you'll need to cut 2 of each, which will give you a few extra beads, but like I said, you need 10 beads for this project. The beads are very simple to cut by hand, and in the bead making tutorial, that is how I demonstrate making the beads. But you can also cut these on a Cricut cutting machine. And if you'd like more information on that, there is a video tutorial linked in the description for that process as well. To find the templates, you'll need to also go to the description box, and the link will take you to my blog post. If you scroll down to the bottom of the post, you'll find both PDF and SVG files that you can use either on your Cricut cutting machine or to print out and cut the beads by hand. So we're officially ready to get started assembling the caterpillar now. And the first thing I want to do is cut 2 pieces of my 20 gauge wire at about 22 inches, and I'm going to cut 5 pieces at 4 inches. So we can set aside our 5 4-inch pieces for now. And I'm going to start with my 2 longer pieces. And I'm going to use my round tip jewelry pliers to make a loose coil for the antenna. So I'll do that in one end of each of my long pieces. And then I want about 1.5 inches down, depending on how long you want to make the antenna. You want to make about a 90-degree bend in the wire. Next, I'm going to take my 2 small black beads and thread one onto each wire. The next step is to take one large bead and thread the wires through the bead in opposite directions. The little black 5mm bead will be sliding around at this point, and you do want to keep it on the curled side of your bend of your wire. Next, you're going to pull your 2 wires tight to the large bead, fold them underneath the bead, and twist them in the middle. So I've twisted my wires about 3 or 4 times. You want a little bit of maybe a 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch of wire that's twisted below your first bead. To assemble the body, I'm going to treat all of the remaining beads in a similar fashion. The first thing I want to do is take my next bead and I'm going to fold the wires a little bit around the bead just to help guide the wires through when I pull them through in opposite directions. So I want to fold the ends down, centering the bead. And then I'll thread the wires in opposite directions through my second bead. And I'm going to pull in equal directions to try to slide the bead into the notch that I folded. When you get close to the end, you may want to use your pliers to pull it tight. You just want to make sure that you get your beads centered, so you don't want to over pull on one side. If you need to, you can bend your notch back in there just to try to get the bead to set evenly below the first bead. And then I want to cross my wires again underneath the bead. Make sure they're centered, and I'm just going to twist them 1 time. And then I'm ready to apply my next bead, and I'm going to do that in the same fashion as the second bead. If you think you might struggle with this step, it would be a good thing to probably choose to use the 22 gauge wire instead of the 20 gauge wire, just because, like I said, it is a little bit easier to work with and thread through the beads in this fashion. I want my wires here to become the back pair of legs, or false legs, I guess. Caterpillars have some false legs and some actual legs. But I want the legs to come out of my second to the last bead. So I'm just going to take each of my wires one at a time, cross them back over the top of my bead, wrap them around 1 time, and thread them through my second bead here. Just going to go over, round 1 time, and back through. Again, you might need your pliers to get this pulled all the way through. And then I'll take my second wire and just go in the opposite direction. Once around. And through the other direction. This is a tricky step, especially if you're using the 20 gauge wire, because you do need to be able to thread 4 pieces of the 20 gauge wire through, so it may take you a minute, but you should be able to get them through there. Might have to be a little patient with this step because it does take a minute sometimes. I'm ready for my short pieces now, and I'm going to thread them through my 2nd, 3rd, 4th bead, 7th, and 8th bead. If you have difficulty threading these, sometimes it helps if you go from the opposite direction. I want them to be fairly centered, and then I'm just going to bend them at 90-degree angle. And before I do the final shaping, I want to go ahead and glue the legs on each side of the bead so that they won't swing back and forth. And to do that, I'm going to use a little bit of E6000 glue and a toothpick to apply the glue. If your legs are moving around a lot and not staying where you want them to, you can use some tape to make sure they stay at a 90-degree angle. The other thing is you want to go ahead and glue down the eyeballs at this point too. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue right in the corner here and let that eyeball slide right down into the glue. So I'm going to let this glue set up for a couple of hours before we do the final shaping. I'm ready for the final shaping, and I want to start by trimming all of the wires to a similar length. And once that's done, I'm using the jewelry pliers to make a tight coil in each wire to form the feet and the legs. After the wires are all coiled, you can finish shaping the caterpillar. I like to shape mine by adjusting the antenna, tipping the head up, and forming a hump in the middle. But of course, you can shape yours any way you want to. If you'd like, you can check out some of my other aluminum can creatures or learn to make aluminum can beads in the links below. Be sure to check out all of the additional resources available in the description. Click the like button and subscribe if you'd like to see more upcycled projects. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you back here soon in the lab for my next experiment.